In this demo, I'm going to show you a trick to simplify your development process when you're working with Azure App Service security. What we're going to do is we're going to add development mode auth to our ASP.NET Core application so that we can develop with some basic security offline, essentially saving you the bother of having to constantly redeploy to Azure just to do development. So in order to support development mode login, basically the ability to run our application locally inside of Visual Studio or Visual Studio Code, what we're doing is we're adding a provider locally on our application. In our middleware class's implementation of invoke async, I've separated our logic into two paths, development mode and non-development mode. And which one we actually run when we're running the application depends on this configuration value, development mode. That config value lives in appsettings.json, but we can also override that using an environment variable or a setting in our Azure portal config for our app service. Whatever is in my appsettings.json and checked in the version control, that's what I think of as my development mode configuration. So this here is a development mode configuration, and the development mode auth is turned on. So let's take a look at this running in the actual application in Visual Studio. Okay, so here is the application, and if I want to log in, let's go to login. And this takes me to this page, security/login. This is not part of EasyAuth. This is part of our provider for local development. So you've got a link to log in. It pops up this page here with a username and password, and it says that you can log in with any user you want, and it's valid. So as you can imagine, you definitely don't want to deploy development mode login in production because anybody could get in. But for development, it's actually pretty nice. Type in whatever username you want. It just works. You don't have to worry about typing in a password. It's fine. So I'm going to log in using admin@test.com. And there I am. I'm logged in. Go to security summary. And there's my stuff. Very basic ability to have development mode login without having to deploy to Azure. So how do we actually make this work? A lot of that login logic is happening in Security Controller. So Security Controller, same thing we're using to populate our multiple login modes. So if Microsoft account is turned on or Google is turned on or Active Directory is turned on, it adds that link. If development mode is turned on, it puts that in. If we show the development mode login page, this is the method that gets called. And when we actually log in, here is what we do. So this handles the HTTP post, and it just creates a bunch of claims. Out of nothing, it creates fake claims. It also calls HTTP context sign-in async and passes in some authentication properties. This is stuff that comes to us from ASP.NET Core MVC. And if you call that method and isPersistent is true, it's going to write a certain amount of information into a cookie. After that, it returns you to whatever URL you're supposed to go to by issuing a redirect. So this populates those claims, and now let's go look back at populate claims middleware. So back in our invoke async method, if its development mode equals true, then we're going to run this in development mode. Otherwise, we're going to use real claims. What we'll do is we just put those claims in, grab the claims from the current user, the ones we created in Security Controller, and then just add them in with some basic information. It's kind of junk information, but it's really easy. And it works for local development. We create a claims identity, and then we create a claims principal that we set onto HTTP context user. And that's it. Local development mode authentication that we can use offline without having to go and deploy into Azure App Service. Once again, riding on top of middleware. Now, to make sure that we don't deploy this into production, let me show you one little thing that I think is very important. Back in the portal for our app service, so this is the production app service. Let's go to configuration. And it is extremely important that in production, if you're using my code, that you set security settings __ development mode to false. That disables the development mode login process so that you cannot use that in production. Very, very important. Okay, so that's development mode auth. Next up, I'm going to quickly show you some stuff that you can do with the authorize attribute and prove to you that you can use this along with Azure App Service security.